consider during the first days back. And I'm hoping that at the end of this session, thank you for doing that. I'm hoping that at the end of this session, we will have some clarity around some of those just considerations. And a lot of times the answers are in the room, right? So Edric, I'm going to drop in one more time.
Okay, yeah, we got some more
Chat
that
so, Mentimeter, because we have about 46 folks, and I'll let you start screen sharing and take us away.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you guys had a wonderful spring break and well restful and rested and ready to tackle the rest of the school year, right? So what we wanted to kind of do is, you know, a lot of us haven't done this in a long time, right? Some of it's been a year and a half, you know, and it's, you know, I understand some of the anxieties and some of the, you know, some of the worries and, you know, some of those feelings that we get at the school, beginning of the school year. We all know how important that first week of school is, right? That is probably the most important thing that we do in an entire year is, you know, how do we get to know our students? What procedures our students are going to follow? What are the school rules? What are our classroom rules? What are expectations? So we want to kind of go over all that information, you know, in this time here. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay, and I'm going to go to the top here. Sorry, everybody. And let me go ahead and view. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so we're looking at the first days back by the numbers here, and again, we're just going to go through, you know, some information that may be beneficial to think about as you're getting your kids for the first time in quite a while here. And again, if you have any questions, you know, please feel free to put it into the parking lot space, and we can definitely go over that in a few minutes here. Okay. So. Okay. All right, so we're breaking this down into 9 components here, and if you notice there's a number by each component, there's going to be, for each number, there's going to be a set number of items there. So for example, the routines and procedures, we have 3 routines and procedures that we may want to think about, 4 pieces of the classroom management, and so on there. So that's the way we're going to kind of organize this information today. Okay. And we're going to start with the equity reminder. And
Awesome.
Lacey, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Edric. So if you could change the slide real quick. This is just one reminder. One reminder. We have one mission. Our mission is to ensure high levels of learning for all kids. That's why we're here. It's not, we hope they learn. It's not, we will teach. It's, we are here to ensure high levels of learning for every single kid. So that's hard. It was hard in the before times. It's even harder now. So here are some suggestions, right? And we're going to tinker towards that utopia. Here are some suggestions. When we think about our class, it's a good idea to audit our class through a virtual lens. So think about, what would this feel like for the students who are only on Zoom? Because they have the most barriers in front of them. So thinking about this through a lens of equity, are we ensuring that our students who have the most challenges ahead of them have equitable access to the learning? You could also audit your class through the lens of your IEP accommodations, modifications, and best practices. We know that the practices that work best for the students who have learning needs, special learning needs, those practices ensure high levels of learning for all kids. You could also audit your class through the lens of language development support. So think about this. If I were an English language learner or new to the country within the last year or two, and if you're in high school, you've had foreign exchange students, right? Audit your class through the lens of those students who need additional language development support. And always think about, what can my students do? Not what can't they do, but how do we build upon their strengths to get them to what they need to do? So there's our equity reminder. Edric, let's move to the next slide.
All right. So number 2, really important piece is, you know, what are our thoughts on assigned seats? And this year is going to be a little bit different than any other year, the rest of this year, and maybe next year. Guidance from PED and fire marshals state, and really important here, that seating charts and furniture, so desks, chairs, and furniture may not be rearranged. Students must sit facing front, that should be front into the same direction. They should all be in the same direction there. So that's part of the guidance of the PED and fire marshal. And this is going to be an important piece to maintain seating charts to support contract tracing. So one way that I was thinking about, since we really can't move the desk around, anything like that, maybe we give our number, our kids a number, and that's their desk, for the rest of the semester. That way they don't have to be changing desks, and even if there's a little bit of movement in that room, they're still going to be at that area. So that was just kind of an idea that I had for thoughts on assigned seats there. So I'll move on to number 3.
Thank you, Edric. So that idea about, I remember back in the day, I used to have playing cards, right? And kids would be assigned by playing cards or colors or numbers. And right now we have a little less creativity around student movement in the classroom. So just be mindful of those things. Although movement is still important. So that may come up with our routines and procedures. Edric, go to the next slide for me. We really thought about, okay, what are the 3 different times in our class where we need to think about routines and procedures? So remember, we're not giving you answers right now. We're really posing questions. So have you considered your routines around how students should enter the room? How students should get materials in the room? I used to keep a jar full of pencils for students who needed pencils. That might not be my routine any longer. Or if I have pencils, do I have a clean pencil versus a used pencils like they do at restaurants or stores? How are you engaging students in the beginning of class? So are you asking, we're gonna use two different terms, by the way, roomers and zoomers. So our roomers are kids who are in the room and are walking in the door. Am I greeting them? Am I reminding them to log on to their Canvas and make sure they have all their materials set up? My kids who are zoomers, have I trained them? Have I taught them? Have I been explicit in teaching them how to get started for the day? Perhaps I'm not an English teacher. By the way, I'm an English teacher. Perhaps instead we work in the shop, or I'm an art teacher, or I'm a computer applications teacher, or I'm a science teacher. How are my students who are entering the room managing their materials and starting their learning versus how are my students on Zoom? Do both have an activity? Is that activity the same? Those are questions to consider, right? So opening routines is one time. Student work time, that bulk of our time. How am I transitioning between learning? Is it possible that I'm saying to students, okay, Zoomers, you have 10 minutes to complete this task that is on Canvas. And in 10 minutes, I'm going to ask you to come back to me so that while you are doing your work, I'm going to turn my attention to the students who are in the room, the roomers. So Zoomers, I need you to set a timer for 10 minutes. We are coming back together. It's 1:12 on my clock right now. Set a timer at 1:22. We will all return to this Zoom. How am I going to have routines and procedures where I focus on students in the Zoom at a different time than students in the room? How does a student signal for help? So right now, I might be able to look up and see students who are raising their hand. But on Zoom, what will that look like? How will students signal for help? Here's a teacher cue. This is a big one. Edric, can you do me a favor and stop sharing screen for just a minute? Back in the day, the issue was the phone, right? Or the earphones. And in class, those were always the things that landed up being policed. So we've got these headphones, right? And they're not paying attention to you because they got both their headphones in. So I'm like, Alejandro, right? And I cue Alejandro and he knows I don't even have to say anything. Alejandro. Well, Alejandro, if he didn't take his headphones, then I would say, Alejandro, headphones, right? So now I'm saying 2 words. So what might be my cue for the masks? Because we know that part of the thing is kids coming to school means they got to mask up. Those were my 2 words, by the way. mask up. But before I even say mask up, what could be my cue? Could it be the ASL sign for mask? Could it be like this? Could it be your nose? What is your cue going to be? Because I am telling you, I'm begging you, and I'm looking at like Allison Aguirre. I am just begging you, Kennedy, don't spend all of your time policing these student behaviors. Teach them the expectations, train them in your cues so that you can minimize all those conflicts. Because we don't want our kids coming back here to engage in conflict. We want our kids coming back here so we can learn and tiptoe back to normal, right? So let's figure out what are our cues, what are our routines and procedures. Edric, that was important for me to show. Will you, thank you. You may have other cues, routines, procedures. If you're in a science safety lab, maybe you have a cue around like safety wear. I don't know. What are your routines and procedures around beginning and finishing an assignment? We always tell students, you have 5 minutes to finish this assignment. I'm sending you into breakout rooms for 5 minutes, or you can work quietly for 5 minutes. But do we ever give them time to begin? Okay, you have 20 seconds. I need you to get out your paper. I need to see that you're writing. Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Vasquez. I can see your eyes moving on the screen. Thank you, Mr. Pasquill. I so appreciate that I saw you bring your book back to the computer. Thank you so much, Edric, for bringing your pencil and getting it out and getting started. How are we positively reinforcing those routines and procedures? And closing, how are we putting materials away? How are we having them put their iPads, their MacBooks, their headphones, all their things? Are they transitioning from your classroom to another? Are we building in time so that they can exit the room safely? What does that look like? Am I dismissing by rows, by table? What about cleaning? One more thing, Edric. What about cleaning? So this cleaning idea, right? It used to be, okay, I'm going to pass back papers. Everyone take a Post-it note. As you take a Post-it note, pass it back to your friend, right? At the beginning of the room, I didn't go to every kid and collect papers. They passed them forward and I collected them. What are those procedures? Because those are instructional minutes. Couldn't it be the same for Clorox wipes? Okay, Johnny, you're going to be my Clorox wipe captain today. You're responsible for getting Clorox wipes and giving them to the person at the front of each row, and they pass it back. Or perhaps it's manning the chat, right? Okay, Juan Carlos, you're responsible for manning the chat because my cognitive load is too high. I am juggling way too many things. Juan Carlos, you're the chat captain today. So anytime you have a question or there's a question in the chat, I'll stop every once in a while. Okay, Juan Carlos, you're up. What did they say, right? So think about what are those routines and procedures, because teachers have never been asked to juggle more than you are being asked to juggle, and we appreciate you. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So I'm going to go real fast here. Classroom management and student discipline are not the same thing. How we create environments for our students to thrive should be positive. So I'm going to share with you, go 2 more, Edric. I'm not even going to worry about this whole idea of being proactive and immediately responding to behaviors. I'm going to share with you these many coach C words, okay? Not bad C words, not 4-letter C words, good C words. And I want you to choose one. I want you to open up the chat. This is a good time to get your thinking going. Okay. Which of these words, which one best aligns with your goals for classroom management? If you could choose one of these C words to represent the classroom management you would like to have, what would it be? Please put it in the chat. Seeing a lot of calm, consistency, creativity, calm for sure, collaboration. Awesome. Consistency. We don't want our kids to have a moving target. We want them to be very clear. We want connection. This is about relationships, connection. Thank you for being intentional about identifying which of these you might most align to. Remember that C. Keep that in mind as we start back into this blended learning environment. Remember whichever one that was. Edric, can you go to the next slide? All of these terms, these 4 that I've got up here, come from a book called The First Days of School. And some of this is not new for many of you. In fact, I bet many of us have classroom norms that we've created with our Zoomers. I bet we have social contracts where we came together and we said, okay, what is the classroom that we want to learn in? What would it feel like? What would it look like? What would we expect from our classmates? What would we expect from each other? Now, our job as we move into this blended environment is to think about how do we update or begin again, given that we have both roomers and Zoomers. So I want you to notice, and it's hard to read because it's really small, there are 3 little questions. 1, 2, and 3. When I have an idea or a question I would like to share, I can do what when we're in person? Can I raise my hand? Can I put it in the chat? Can I take myself off mute?
Perfect.
When we are learning remotely, what can I do? When I have an idea but don't feel comfortable sharing it out loud, and by the way, we're going to send you this slideshow. So really think about, how do I help my students feel like they're part of creating, collaborating around what their choices are around an effective and caring learning environment. Edric, go to the next slide. And of course, think about what might the consequences be. And this is all from parenting, by the way. My kids, my own children, have taught me more about teaching, and teaching has taught me more about parenting than I can ever say. Consequences for behavior should be logical. So if we were to go back to one of those comics at the beginning, it said something like, because this child threw an airplane, I am now going to give everyone a pop quiz. Well, that's not a logical consequence. Because this child threw an airplane, this child needs to pick it up and put it in the trash, because when you make a mess, you clean it up, right? And then I want to know that this child, that this student, and yes, even our adolescents and our teenagers, they're kids. We need to talk to them respectfully, and we need to make their consequence relevant and realistic, right? So I always say, especially with teenage girls, because I'm a younger woman, or I used to be, teenage girls will always look for a fight. If you're there, they will fight with you. So avoid the power struggle, right? Tanya, you turned your work in late again. I need you to stay for a little while at the end of the day so that you can finish this assignment. Or I need you to look at your calendar and tell me when you're going to finish this assignment. Look at these little images over here. You don't stop the class just because there was a disruption. You keep teaching, right? Maybe you use some de-escalation strategies. These are all things to think about that are different than we've had to think about for a year. When we go back into the classroom, the energy we bring into our classroom, it will change. It will change. And our kids are going to bring energies too. So we just need to be mindful and about not adding trauma, right? And if, oh, I love this quote. I'm going to put it in the chat real quick. Kids often show their trauma through their behavior. I spelled it wrong. Kids often show their trauma through their behaviors. So what is in that behavior? Is it because they're confused? Is it because they haven't been in school for a while? Is it because they don't understand what you're asking of them? Is it because they can no longer hide, right? So what are the consequences? Let's make them logical or natural. Let's go to the next slide, Edric. And here's a really important one as a mom. Monkey see, monkey do. So if we are not consistent with our consequences, for example, the mask, right? So I took my son, Tyson, and my niece, Aria, to the zoo last Monday. Tyson saw Aria, the 3-year-old, take her mask off. It fell down like this, right? And Tyson immediately took his mask off. So after Tyson immediately took his mask off, I said, Tyson, dude, you got to put your mask back on, dude. That's why we're at the zoo. We can come to the zoo, but you got to wear your mask. And he said, Mom, but Aria doesn't have her mask on. Monkey see, monkey do. We were looking at the monkeys, but my little monkey said, Mom, you didn't correct Aria's behavior. So monkey see, monkey do. You got to be consistent with those consequences every single time. Let's go. One last one. Here's another thought about consistency. If you already had some really awesome online expectations, check this out. Be prepared. What does that look like online? Can I update that so that I'm using the same expectations in person? What does it mean to be prepared in class, right? In person. Can I change my expectations that were once in place for my Zoomers and just update them with similar language for my roomers, right? Let's try to be as consistent as possible. One last point about communication. We had talked about the possibility of maybe creating, giving students a hand in creating like our classroom expectations. And one way of doing that is to make that a group project. So asking our students, involving our students, maybe using some breakout rooms or using some small groups in class. What does it look like to collaborate? What does it look like and sound like to work in the lab? What does it look like and sound like to practice a skill on the basketball court? Can we be really clear about what this looks like and sounds like when we're doing active listening? But then don't just do these kinds of activities. Make it a part of your class culture, right? Come back to it, refer to it. If the students created it and you refer to it, then everyone will start to live it. But if we create it and then abandon it and don't come back to it again, or we don't communicate those expectations consistently, it no longer matters. It was just a cool activity. Okay. Now, Edric, can we really quickly, we're gonna take a brain break, right? We have a brain break.
I'm gonna stop sharing here. Okay.
And here's the brain break. So it's a brain break and a parking lot. So we had one question in our Mentimeter, and now I'm hoping we can have a new one. Got to find it though.
And use this time if you need to kind of stand up, take a stretch. We've been on for 27 minutes right now, so that's important, you know. So
on my Menti, I've now got a screen up that says parking lot, questions, concerns, brain break. This is a place for you to literally walk away, or maybe you have some questions that need answered, or ideas that you just want to jot down, or something that was helpful, or something you want more clarification on. That was a lot. Classroom management was a lot. But go to that Mentimeter. And if you're having a difficult time, you might see a little button at the top that says go to the next question, something like that.
So you want to take about 2 minutes to do this at 1:30, Lacey? All right, I'll set my clock. Again, use this time to kind of stretch out, get some water, get a soda. Got 1 more minute.
So Edric, I know folks are coming back and this is a good time to maybe just notice some of those parking lot questions. We've got some questions. And this one, please, whomever wrote this, I'm just giving you the biggest hug. And I hear that. And I actually think we need to start with something about this in just a moment. So questions about masks and distancing and the number of students less than the number of desks in our room. Can we move the excess desks to a corner to provide more space for the desks we will actually be using? I think some of these questions are going to be really good to take back to site administrators. So I'm glad site administrators know we're like asking you to ask questions. We're asking you to have those questions. I also want to just really quickly, so these, what if students refusing to wear a mask? I think there's a way to gently encourage, also reminding students that part of us being here involves choices and consequences, right? Choice, consequence, consistency, and communication. Go back to that. We are free to make a choice, but we are not free from the consequences of our choice. So if we choose to be here, the cost is we got to wear a mask. The consequence for not wearing a mask is what kids want to know why. You're putting other people in danger, you're putting other families in danger. It's about social responsibility. And also, like, at some point, those questions and those conversations, they should always start from an understanding and loving place, right? And at some point you might need to ask for some backup. So these are good questions to be having with other folks. There's one more piece here. So this number of students less than the number of desks in room, I would definitely follow up with site admin and maybe even have someone come into your classroom and give you some ideas about that. I haven't heard that you can't, although I know there are fire code issues, so I'm not going to speak to that. I want to talk about this, and I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Yesterday morning at 7:30, we came back from spring break, and our very first meeting, the new director of, I know I'm going to butcher the title, curriculum and instruction, old title was curriculum and instruction. She said, listen, coaches, we're begging you, when you go back and you talk to your teachers, please let them know that we are all feeling all types of emotions. Some of us are stressed, some of us are fearful, some of us are excited, and some of us are all of those things all at once. So being overwhelmed, yeah, and let's acknowledge it, because we, the adults in the room, if we don't acknowledge all of those emotions that we're feeling, how can we possibly help our students to acknowledge all the conflicting emotions they might be feeling? So acknowledge your overwhelm, take a deep breath. We are not going to be perfect. We are going to struggle, and we are all here to support each other. So please just know that. And Edric and Erica, and I see some of our ISCs, and we're all figuring this out for the first time together. So this is not about having the answers. This is about just posing some questions and providing some ideas. Edric?
And thank you, Lacey, for that. And I just want to add to that, we're all here to support each other, and we need to support each other, especially at this time, because it doesn't matter if you've been teaching for 6, 7, 8 months, or you've been teaching for 25, 30 years, this is new to everybody, and it's okay. It's okay to have those feelings. And once we kind of get rolling with this thing, I think that a lot of people are going to start feeling a little bit better, but it's going to take some time, and we got to give it to some time. And I think that we're all going to be in a better place once we kind of start this up here. So, all right. Okay, so we're halfway through the presentation right now. And again, as Lacey kind of stated, that, we don't have all the answers, but we do want to pose some questions that you need to start thinking about. And, this is some of the information that we may get in our staff meetings over the next couple of days, dealing with some of the, COVID issues and everything that's going on, I guess, right now. So, a couple of or 5 considerations that we want to think about are what are behavior improvement plans? What are the health plans for our students? What are 504s, and where can we find that information? I know that our BIP plans, our BIPs, our Dr. Shager at Los Lunas Middle School, I think he's kind of the guy that that deals with that right there. I think that Mrs. Howard, our nurse at Los Lunas Middle School, works with the health plans. 504s would be Miss Flores and Tomasita. So we want to kind of know what those things are and where to find that information if we don't know, and ask about that. COVID safe practices. What are going to be some of the things that kids do when they walk in? What are they going to do when they walk out? Are they going to have to clean the desk? Are teachers going to have to clean the desk? So those are things that we'll need to talk about, within our schools here. What do fire drills look like? Okay, active shooting drills. Where are our emergency supplies? Okay, so usually we get these big blue buckets here. Okay, are they going to be providing that this year? So we'll kind of figure out that information as we get closer. What about unsafe student behavior, vapors? And Erica, you kind of mentioned this one, and I like the way you said this. Basically, you have to always be scanning your room. It doesn't matter how innocent you think our students are. If you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. And we have to be observant on every single minute in our classroom about student behaviors. So just keep an eye out, and develop those routines, where you don't have those confrontations within class, but rather, it's those nonverbal confrontations or nonverbal cues that you give your students to stop doing what they're doing, So we'll talk about that here a little bit more in a little bit. And student teacher health, wellness, who do we contact? Where do we go? What is the procedure when students are sick and teachers are sick? So again, I think that we'll get a lot more information about this during our staff meetings over the next couple of days. But again, just keep these in mind, and things will be answered.
Edric, can I also say, and I'm saying this because we've got some veteran teachers in this space. And one of the things I always did, I have a roster, right? We all have a roster. The roster is overwhelming if I'm being responsive immediately. So a better plan for me was I had a Post-it note with the 5 important phone numbers that I needed immediately, or that maybe it's 10. Have that right next to your desk phone. Make sure you know where your desk phone is, right? Make sure you know how to get your next door neighbor to come cover your class if something crazy happens, right? Like, these are things to think about. And the reason I said we have a bunch of veteran teachers is because, hey, veteran teachers, if any of the stuff we're saying is ringing true, or you have hey, this is what I used to do, drop it in the chat, because we have at least 10 folks in our Los Lunas Tigers midst who haven't had a class of students in person. They may be stellar online teachers, but we need to wrap our arms around them social distancely and just help them. What are the things that they need to know? Okay, so please blow up that chat as you have additional ideas.
All right. Okay, and Erica.
All right, so classroom community builders. When we were preparing this conversation or the presentation, and we were having a conversation, I was really excited when we talked about community builders, because we have students that not only have not been in the classroom for a year now, but thinking about the 7th graders at LMS, right? This is the first time they've been on a middle school campus. Or our freshmen at LLHS. This is the first time they've been on a high school campus. And some of them are extremely nervous, right? And then we have our other students who, they also thinking about the first day of school jitters, right? They may be anxious about returning in person. So classroom community builders, of course, they set the tone for your classroom community. And they allow not only you as the teacher to kind of associate students' names and faces, but they create that classroom culture, and they allow students to connect with each other. And then they also allow us as teachers to relate to the students, to see what they're interested in, and then building that rapport and trust. So Edric, if you can skip to the next one. Building rapport with students, if you can make it a goal to try to talk to every student every period and use their names, whether it's greeting them as they walk in, whether it's on Zoom or in person. I know a veteran teacher said that they always made a list of students and they would try to talk to about 5 students a day. And I might say, hey, Edric, like, I noticed, you have a really cool art piece on your notebook, and just making that very cognizant attempt to make a connection with your students. For some of them, that is going to go such a long way. And again, we at the beginning of the year normally have our classroom building activities, but thinking about what that looks like now if we have students, both our Zoomers and our Roomers, our in-person and then our online. I know that many of us have our classroom builders that we know work in person, but thinking about what that might look like online. So I wanted to offer a couple of great classroom builders that could work for either student, Zoomer or Roomer, to really create that connection and that network. So the first one is called Hey Me Too. And this one really allows students to see commonalities between them, to find what they have in common. So as a teacher, I might start and I would explain that I'm going to make a statement about myself. And here I don't want to try to come up with the most unique statement. I actually want to come up with a statement that other people might have in common with me. And they'll raise their hand. Of course, Zoom students can also raise their hand. And I might pick and I might say, Paola, let's share your statement. She would share her statement. And then if I have it in common, I'm going to raise my hand, and Paola might pick the next person and they're going to share their statement. And really encouraging students to look around and see, who has things in common with them. Again, building that classroom network where they know, okay, well, at least I can talk with that person because we have something in common, right? We have that connection. And then that also opens the door to where I can go to the student and I say, hey, I remember that you have a husky dog, right? I also have a husky, and just finding those commonalities where you can begin to build that foundation, that trust, that relationship with them. All right, Edric, next one. This one is very near and dear to my heart. I was sharing with Lacey and Edric that I am a total, I write the Post-it notes with motivational quotes or slogans. And so asking students to create a quote or a slogan that will support them through the rest of the school year. Maybe they can design it. If they're artistic, they could do it in Keynote, Google Slides, and have that there for them. You could even add it to Canvas to where they can access it if they're having a rough day, and they can look through different things that have helped their classmates kind of keep their mind in the game. So that is another activity that you could do.
Sorry about that.
This one's such a great one. You can go ahead and move forward, Edric.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right. So a gift is worth 1,000 words. And students really love gifts, and it's actually pronounced just like the peanut butter, but I don't know, that's weird to me. Anyhow, you would provide them with a prompt, and then they have to respond to the prompt with a gift. And the prompts could be, and gifts could be shared on a collaborative document like Padlet. Edric, can I share my screen really quickly, actually?
Oops.
So we did this actually in a staff meeting, and I got to work with Mikey Romero, and we laughed so much. So here's an example of a Padlet where they compile their gifts. And so the prompt was how I feel when it's Sunday evening. And you can see some responses here. Another prompt that she used with her staff was how I feel about remote learning. And then each staff member actually got to share out why they chose their GIF. There was a lot of laughter, lots of engagement. Another one, how I feel when a student has a moment of understanding. And so I think that students really, they use GIFs quite often. It's something that we use in texting. It's something that is really relatable for them, and they have fun with it. So that is definitely a community builder, and you could do a different prompt each week, right? So this could be an ongoing activity for students. All right, next one, Edric.
Okay.
A class playlist is another super simple one. We know that our students love music. We're constantly saying, hey, can you take the AirPod out, right? So maybe begin building a class playlist by asking students to submit a, of course, school appropriate song for the class playlist. I'm a person, I love categories. So maybe you say like, pick your favorite instrumental song or your favorite song that just brings you from like here and chills you out down to here, right? And students can always explain why they chose the song, and it could be played maybe when they're entering the room, whether in person or remote, or while they're waiting to be split up into groups. So again, just a touch point to connect with them and giving them opportunities to connect with each other. And this one's so great because, you know, when you're having a bad day and your song comes on and you're just like, I got my jam, like I can get through this. And I think our kids operate a lot the same way. All right, next one. I Spy with my device. You could provide a prompt for students and they can share their pictures either in a collaborative slideshow or they could share screen. And one way you could do it is like a close-up of something, right? And maybe the students guess, maybe it's a fun Friday activity and then their other picture shows what it actually is. Or if I'm a science teacher, I might say, find a picture that demonstrates Newton's first law, right? And then they can explain how their picture would demonstrate that. And again, this could be something that you could use week after week and change the prompt for them. Maybe something that they can anticipate or that they can think about all week and kind of get that plan, and then they get to share it. All right, Edric, last one. We know that our students love taking pictures. So the best of photo challenge. And again, you could provide a category like your best selfie or your best food picture. Even a device wallpapers, a picture that they think would make the best device wallpaper Zoom background. Again, this is another one that could be carried forward week after week, changing the category. Students could even vote for their favorite photo submission and explain why they liked it. So again, giving students opportunities to share with themselves and share themselves with each other and with you, and meeting them at their level and finding things that they enjoy and look forward to that they can use to connect with each other, to bring up the morale and to really just set that tone that we're in this together, we're a team, we're going to have fun, and that they're being seen, because I think a lot of them have really have kind of felt unseen, or you know, they're so used to turning the video off that this brings them back into that classroom and connecting. All right.
All right, so we're gonna look at number 7 here. So ways to focus on learning. And there's 7 things that we kind of, I mean, there's infinite amount of things that we could focus on learning, and we kind of narrowed it down to 7 that we felt like were going to be the most important here, you know. And kind of going through this, you know, probably the most important thing that we deal with, you know, on day 1 and minute number 1 is how to teach routines. We all think that our kids are going to come in and that they should know it, right? They should get it. They should know better than that. But honestly, they're kids. They're Here at the middle school, they're 12, 13, 14 years of age. At the high school, they're 13 to 21, right? So, we got to teach those routines, and it doesn't matter whatever we want our students to do, we have to make sure that we teach it. Okay. That could be walking into the classroom. That could be how they're working into groups. How are they answering questions? How are they discussing in a whole group setting? How are they getting their materials? So anything and everything that we deal with in a classroom, we have to teach it, right? We have to explain and model it. We have to let them practice it. And then we have to reinforce that, give them those positive rewards, right on, Bill, you did a great job there. You get to leave early, something like that there. But, we got to teach it, and everything needs to be taught. And if we do that, I can guarantee a lot of our classroom management issues kind of go away there. Okay. So the second piece is attention getters. This is another big one. And us veteran teachers, we've been to a class where, we have 35 kids and they're just yelling, shouting, screaming, laughing, and we try to talk over them, and they get louder and we get louder, so they get louder, and it just turns into this feuding system here, right? So we have to develop some ways that students are going to focus on whatever we have to say and get back on task there. So I got 5 different things. Again, there's hundreds of different things. I just found 5 that I was kind of reading or that I've used before. Teacher says 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. Student says 1, 2, 3, eyes on you. Some people are more vocal. Me, I'm a more nonverbal type of attention getter person. Stand in one place in the room. I need your attention. Go ahead. So stand in one place, and you're going to just stand there and count down. 5, 4, by 3, 2, 1. You should see the sound kind of go down. By the time you hit 0, all eyes should be on you, ready for your input there. So that's an extremely important one. That's something that I use even today. Clapping. Okay, so teacher says, everybody clap 3 times. So the teacher claps 3 times, the students clap 3 times. Okay, teacher says, everybody clap twice. So then the teacher claps and then the students claps. And now the students should be focused on what you got there, okay? Again, this is what number 4, something that I do. I stand in one spot, hold my hand up and count down, okay? Or one of the hardest things, and I think that a lot of us have difficulty, is deliver and wait, okay? Makes us feel uncomfortable, right? So if you wait, at some point they are going to, they should, fall in line there and kind of start listening there. But again, all this takes a little bit of teaching here, okay? And again, introduce and teach a signal, have the class practice the procedure, assist students with guidance, and practice. So be specific when you reinforce. So thank you, class, for being quiet when I did my attention getter. I appreciate the class. I appreciate that the class did, you guys walked to, I don't know, the cafeteria correctly in a straight line. William, good job but be specific whenever you give that praise there, okay? And it's okay. It's okay if you take one problem off their homework. Reward the students for doing the right thing, okay? Don't praise them, just get that kind of that attention piece going there, okay? Foster a growth mindset, the power of yet.
Yes, Rick.
Yes.
Give me a second. We were going to do a quick brain break. Will you stop sharing real quick?
Yes.
We're not even gonna go to the Mentimeter for the sake of time.
Okay.
But you'll notice that folks are already putting some ideas in the chat. I use the words. My turn. Coach Williamson, can you take yourself off mute real quick and demonstrate that for us real quick?
Basically, if I'm just sitting there, I'll just say, my turn, guys, or my turn.
And you raise your hand like that.
Yes.
Awesome. Here, I'm going to teach you all one that could work with Zoom. It won't work with your roomers, but it could work with your Zoomers. All right, Zoomers, We're going to come back together, but I think we just need we need to come back together. I'm going to ask everyone to start turning off let me explain it first. I'm going to ask you to turn off your video, and I only see about half of us on the screen. I'm going to ask you to turn off your video. Give me a second. And then the attention getter and the reset is when we come back together, and we're going to use some counting. All right, Zoomers, I'm going to ask you to turn off your video. So everyone get ready to turn off your video. We're going to turn off our videos by the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And when I say 1, 2, 3, thank you, Lillian. Thank you, Rochelle. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for turning off your videos. Awesome, amazing. And when I say tigers on the count of 3, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 tigers. We're going to turn our videos back on. 1, Jeremy, come on, Jeremy, turn off that video. Jeremy. 1, 2, thank you, Jeremy. 1, 2, 3, tigers. Back on. We'll have to work on it, right? But it's the first couple weeks back. Okay, Edric, that was our brain break.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So number 3, foster a growth mindset. We all get into the habit of, I do it all the time. I'm not good at this, or I can't do that, and we got to start thinking in that growth mindset is, if we try it, I'm going to accept this challenge, and we're going to go further than we did today. And I think that phrase, the power of it, is super important there. It just, it just shows that we're still trying, we haven't given up, and that we're going to do what it takes to move on. So feedback, for example, to a student would be, you don't know how to solve this one-step equation yet, but we're going to work on this piece to get you better at this. Okay. So we're giving them an out there. We're giving our students a way that, yeah, okay, we don't have this just yet, but we're going to go in and we're going to practice. We're going to work through it. We're going to get better at this. And, we just got to make it to the point where we're giving them the opportunity to conquer those challenges that they have there. So, okay. So number 4, the case for learning targets. At this point, I mean, we pretty much all know what a learning target is, I think, but learning targets are concrete goals written in student-friendly language that clearly describes that students will learn and be able to do by the end of class, unit, project, or a course. The important piece to this is that we always need to refer back to our learning targets. Sometimes we get into the habit of, we say at the beginning of the class, and then we don't say it for another 2-3 days, right? We want our kids to come back and say, I don't understand how to solve a multi-step equation. Not, I don't understand my math, but we want them to be specific about what they're learning, right? So we want to give them a chance to know what those learning targets are, and keep on going back to those learning targets on a, throughout the period, throughout the unit, whatever we're doing there. Okay. And these are some examples of how, teachers have written out learning targets. Some have done it on the computer. Some do it on a whiteboard. Some do it on a pretty paper, like it's on the right side. But one thing that I do got to say is that we should have our learning targets available for all our students to access at all times. I think that's a super important point there. Okay.
So this is me.
Lacey. Okay.
Sorry, I was chatting. I'm dropping all in. So I was writing in the chat, and now that was the end of my thought. So here's the thing about adolescents and teenagers, right? Is we also like to know why. We want to know why. Our kids need to know why. Our kids start asking why at around the age of 3. And by the time they turn 13 or 17, why is all that really matters. So they need a compelling why. Help them understand why they need to know those multi-step equations. Help them understand why the water tests in Los Chavez are kind of surprising due to the arsenic. Help them see real world connection. If you're asking them to do notes, right? And you're like, this must be Cornell notes. And they're like, well, why? Tell me that it has to do with my brain retention. Tell me that it has to do with like me better organizing my thoughts so that I can return to them. Help them understand why. Explicitly provide a compelling why. And here's the thing, we are the same way. Adults, we are the same way. We want to know why. It needs to be relevant. We need to know who, we need to trust the who's asking us to do it. We need to know that it's achievable. And ladies and gentlemen, blended learning, this new model that we're entering into, it's going to be hard. I'm going to be honest with you because otherwise I'm not trustworthy. It's going to be hard. And other folks have been doing this since August, and we will learn from them, and we will learn from us, and we will learn from each other. So the how is going to be a little bumpy, but we're going to get there. Because why? What is our what? Our what is teaching and learning during this challenging time so that kids can learn and connect, and we've got this, right? So explicitly provide a compelling why. And as we're asking students to learn, here's a great thing. And you can do this with chat. You can do this in a classroom. Have your students expand on their thinking. Remember, we're talking about 7 ways to focus on learning. Say more about that, Lillian. Thank you so much for that contribution, Kay. Can you teach me about that? Can you show me? Can you help me understand that idea? Explain. Can you make a connection to this? Okay, but I don't quite understand. Help me understand, right? Have your students expand on the thinking, because no one doubts how much you know. We need to know what they know. So have them articulate their thinking, whether it's in the chat with a sentence starter, or maybe it's on a piece of paper where you're saying, okay, everyone show me your paper. Right now, I want you to finish this sentence stem. I learned that photosynthesis is. Take 1 minute, finish that sentence stem. Okay, now I'm going to cold call. Everyone show me your answers. I'm not checking for your understanding. I'm just checking for compliance, right? I'm going to do a quick gallery view. We've all finished it. Okay, now that everyone's finished it, Marvelyn, can you take yourself off mute? Please share with us your answer. Well, you don't have to. Jennifer, share with us on, right? So think about those routines and procedures. Have students expand on their thinking. Go ahead, Hedrick.
Okay. And finally, number 7 is we need to give that specific feedback, and the feedback isn't just for us, right? It's more for our kids to learn what they're supposed to know. And grades are not feedback. When we give feedback, we want to make sure that we give information that is relevant to the assignment that's given, and ways that our students can use that feedback and make their paper, make their problem, make their work better there. It's got to be something that is happens in a very timely manner. If we're giving feedback 6 weeks after they turn in an assignment, we might as well not give them the feedback at all there, right? So we need to make it timely. We need to make it student friendly. I like that wheel there because it gives a lot of information about what to think about when we're giving that feedback out. There's 2 examples. You didn't fully address the prompt to the thesis. Okay, there's our first one. Whereas example number 2 is make sure to tie everything back to your thesis. While your points in the National Bank are good, the example of the Trail of Tears does not seem relevant to your thesis about the common man. Gives us a lot more information to work with, right? It gives us more specific information, not just your thesis is no good, but here are some points that you need to look at when you're writing your thesis.
Okay, so it is officially, and we're not ending. We still got 45 folks who are on this Zoom with us. It's 2:03, and we're going really fast through our last 2 big ideas. And you are welcome to leave. We are recording this. We will put it on a YouTube and send it out should you need to leave. So thank you so much for coming, and we want to honor your time if you need to drop out. So here's the nitty-gritty, right? When I come back into my classroom, how might I set up my classroom? I want to say this. However you currently are teaching your Zoomers, do not feel like you have to radically reinvent the wheel for both your Zoomers and your roomers. If your comfort zone is over here a number 1, MacBook only, you saw how I would sometimes shift my attention away from here to the folks over here. Sometimes I will need to re-engage the students who are in the room, and sometimes I will need to make sure that my eyes are on you and that I'm assessing my gallery view, right? So if MacBook only is the space where you're starting, start there. So go ahead and start sharing, Edric. Some other folks are maybe already using, go back one more, a MacBook and an iPad. Those of you at the middle school, you may already have iPads where you like to screen share and you want to be able to walk around, and maybe you want your gallery view on your MacBook, but your Nearpod is on your iPad. Do what's comfortable for you. If you've been doing this from home in one way, that same way can be recreated at school. Those of you who are at the high school, if you want to check out an iPad, please reach out to Ms. Toledo sooner rather than later. Next slide. Some of us have also been utilizing a MacBook with an extra monitor. I've seen folks set up dual screens. If you are setting up a dual screen, if you have one at home and you have that connector port, you can do the same thing here. The benefit of doing that is that sometimes it's a lot to manage with your split screen. Today, I was able to set up my MacBook and my Apple TV and this little screen. You could see I could do a presentation screen share, but again, I go back to my virtual lens reminder. We always want to audit our class and make sure that both groups are getting the same type of experience. So if I'm going to show a 10-minute video, maybe I'm putting the link to the video on Canvas and I'm asking my Zoomers to hop off the Zoom and go watch that video, set a timer, and come back to our class in 12 minutes when we will all reconvene. Because there are some challenges around Zooming and showing a video all at the same time in one room. Do I really want my roomers to be logged into Zoom? And is that going to eat up our bandwidth? And if it does, do I have a backup plan? What's the purpose of having my roomers on Zoom? Those are questions to start asking yourself. The next slide. Here are some other examples, right? You could have your iPad and your Mac and your Apple TV. Some of us are already getting overwhelmed. Maybe you have a Mac, your extra monitor, your Apple TV. The answer is figure out what works for you. In the next slide. Here's an example from Los Lunas Middle School, right, Edric, where the document camera and Smart Ink. Here's my suggestion. Whatever it is that you choose to do, play around with it before students are on campus. Or give your, yeah, I love that. Jeremy's dropping in the chat. Nearpod allows students to watch videos at their own pace. You can even put in little checks for understanding all along the way. Like those are skills and tools that we didn't have maybe a year ago and now we have. So we just need to figure out how to put all those pieces together and make it work in this blended environment. But I would come and I would figure out the nuances before kids are on campus. For example, you'll see in the upper right corner of my screen, those of us who used to work, who have been in our classrooms, we're familiar with the AirPlay icon. And because I did an update, I couldn't find it anymore. So here's my little tidbit. If you can't find your AirPlay icon, look for this little one with the two toggles. If you click on it, you'll be able to see a little screen pop up that says screen mirroring. That caused me a lot of frustration. So I hope that you being here today, that's one thing that causes you a little less frustration.
And one more thing I want to add to that, and I don't know if everyone's checked their electronic stuff in their classrooms. I know that the tech did go through the classrooms and kind of look at that, but you may want to just kind of come in and just make sure everything is working, you know, before, you know, kids come in. So. Okay. All right. And number 9, questions to consider about groups here. And again, when we're thinking about this and how are we going to group our Zoomers and Roomers, and you know what, again, it's not a one piece fits for everybody. We're all gonna have to do different things, but here's some questions that we need to think about. Does everyone have a task to do while working in this group? How can we ensure students are clear about their task before we send them to groups? Will we ask students to do before, during, and after the group learning? Are the expectations clear? Okay, so this is that setup piece, right? It's basically thinking, what do we want our groups to do? What do we want our students to do while they're in groups? It doesn't make sense for our groups to be, you know, working individually while in a group, right? So how are we gonna have them work collaboratively during that group time there? Number 5, how can we ensure the groups work effectively together and can learn from each other? How will we get the group's attention? How can groups get your attention? Do all students have access to the collaborative learning documents? Can we create opportunities for Roomers and Zoomers to collaborate? And how can we highlight collaborative learning through fishbowls, jigsaw, gallery walks, etc. here again? So again, we kind of want to think about, be very thoughtful of how we put our groups together and why they're in groups, and what are the expectations of those groups as they're kind of working together there. So, okay. And
I think that's it, Edric. We have some resources and we have this kind of PowerPoint with some links that you can explore. Edric, will you do me a favor and stop sharing screen?
yes, I'm doing that right
We
now.
have
Okay.
we've lost about 5 to 10 folks in these last few minutes. We didn't realize it was going to take over an hour, but we do want folks to have an opportunity to ask questions or give feedback, or like, we are asking you to give us permission to advocate. So those burning questions that teachers are having, like, we want to be able to advocate and find out answers, or at least bring those concerns to the table. So we've got 2 ways of doing this. We can either take 3 ways. We can either go to that Menti that's in the chat. So what questions do you still have? How can we advocate for your needs, questions and concerns? What reflections do you have? You can either put it in the Menti, you can put it in the chat, or you can take yourself off mute. But I want to say thank you for being here.
Another thing real quick, I mean, please, if you need anything, talk to any one of us. It doesn't matter if it's at the high school or, it doesn't, we can all work with each other here. And that's the goal here, is that we all want to succeed. We all want to do best for our kids. And, I know I know there's a lot of anxiety. I know it's scary, but we're here to work together, and we're here to help you guys out and, learn from each other and all that stuff there. So.
I also want to say, we just went from like education 101 to education 520 all in one little space. So the goal isn't to do everything that we talked about. The goal is to choose your one next best step and not feel like you have to do everything. And maybe just getting back into the building is a good, like, that's the next step, right? Or maybe it's like, okay, a takeaway that I now have is roomers and Zoomers. I can now compartmentalize roomers and Zoomers. So just take the one next step. Don't feel like it has to be everything.
I have a question. Well, actually, I have several. However, I'll start with just one. And that is that one of the problems that we've had before, up till now anyway, is to be seeing the faces of who's there. In fact, we've got the problem right here. I've got all these pictures of people, but I have no idea, except a few of you, what you actually look like. And the same thing happens when you have your what you were calling Zoomers. I have this J, this X, this real cute little girl, this, all up there, and it is difficult to put a personality on anybody, even though you may talk to them and have a little touch base with them. But I know I had thought about at one point in time was to make the kids, I know there's all kinds of reasons why they may not want you to see where they are. But to maybe help the kids be able to know how you can do that backdrop, or just put a blanket in back or something, just something that is yours, that not everybody has that ability to do in their homes. But some way to make it, you see some of their personalities in the little blanks they have.
I'm hearing you say, I'm going to cut you off. I'm sorry, Ms. Yoder. I'm hearing you ask a couple questions, and it has to do with getting to know our kids, placing a face to the name, placing a personality to the box that's in the screen, or now they're in our classrooms, right? Maybe some of them will be. And I think going back to some of those class community building activities, and knowing that, you know, that happens gradually over time. I think I, I would imagine that I would be really hard on myself, because come April 6th, I would probably have some students walk into my class who have been in my class all year long, and they will recognize me because they only have 7 teachers or 4 teachers or whatever, and I may not recognize them. And I'm going to have to give myself some grace, and I'm going to have to approach that with some humor, and I'm going to have to say, okay, now remind me, and we're all going to have to get to know each
Yeah.
other, because these boxes aren't quite enough, right?
And in addition to that, anybody who is here or the teacher, you're going to have a mask on.
Yeah. So the masks and the one thing that we're going to learn really quickly as the teachers, and I have a first grader, right? So I'm hoping that we get some of those. I'm hoping that we get some of those clear masks soon, because when my first grader is learning how to read, he needs to see his teacher's face. He needs to see their lips when they articulate. So I'm hoping that we get some of those clear covers soon, and we will advocate for that. Another thing is, we need to remember that our voice might have to become exaggerated on Zoom, and we might have to do what Tyra Brink says and smile with our eyes, right? So all of that and that kind of positive energy, I think, will be easier to sustain when we do have some of our kids in class, right?
One of the things that, since I've been working up at the school all this time, you know, there's so many people up here, haha. But with my Zoomers, when we first started talking about doing this, I did put I do a double mask, put that on, and then I could just say, can you hear what I'm saying? And so you'd be surprised if they can hear you. And or you can learn how you do it so that they can hear you through the mask. But I know I get, you can get to know them, but it's going to be very difficult with the kids that are well, as you said, it's difficult for them to come back after a year. You are muted.
It's going to be difficult for all of us. I'm noticing, Mr. Moya, you have that question about dealing with student-to-student handshakes, hand-holding, and contact. I think some of these concerns that we're having now, we probably want to bring to the table when we're creating some of those classroom expectations and routines, right? Because some of our students are going to have that too. So I don't know if the right way is to say, okay, guys, are we doing the elbow bumps? Is that how we're going to agree? What is the appropriate way for us to greet each other in this space? I mean, our kids are old enough to have those conversations. Okay, let's collectively agree upon. And if you're not doing that, then how are we going to hold each other accountable to our agreement? For example, I noticed Ms. Vasquez, are we going to stand in the halls and monitor students between classes? We definitely need to think about how are we keeping our kids safe in the hallways, right? And monitoring their behavior. And I think some of this is taking it back to your collaborative teams and your school sites and saying, what are our agreements about the social and academic behaviors that have to occur in order for us to all be safe? And how are we going to hold each other accountable to those agreements as we build community?
Mr. Weed, you had a question. Will we be assigning student seats or not with administration? I guess, are you asking, are we going to be, can you assign your own seats? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, sorry, I mistyped that. So I was asking, will essentially will there be assigned seating by administration when the kids come in, or will we as the classroom teacher be assigning those at that time and then just making essentially a seating chart for each class?
I would assume that you're going to be doing it because you're going to have some of those IEP documentation and things like that that you're gonna need to follow also, and health plan documentation and things like that. So you'll need to kind of, and we can get together on that later on here in the next few days and kind of look at those and kind of see how to kind of look at how to set up your classroom for some of those students there, because there is that deal with seating arrangements and things like that where they need to sit. So definitely. Great question. Thank you, Jeremy.
Are we gonna get a roster of the students that are gonna come back to school, or is it just gonna be randomly whoever comes in?
Ms. Vasquez,
That's
like
a question for tomorrow.
Ms. Vasquez, I love, so there's those above our pay grade questions, but I will tell you what information I know, which is that the district's return to school survey closed yesterday at 4:30 p.m. and only certain site administrators have access to those results. And so that is a question for tomorrow. I encourage you to ask that question. Or I will.
I'm just wondering because, I mean, we had heard in the previous meeting, I think it was, that if kids don't show up to the classroom, but they show up on Zoom, they're counted, present. But I mean, is it something, like, that's my question. Is it something that, okay, this kid said that they weren't coming back, but then they want to come back now? Are they going to be able to without any notice, or?
All good questions. And I think that I know that what was communicated at our school site level last Wednesday, it has evolved since then. And I believe that the district is the one who started sending out, like, they need hard numbers now. So we need hard numbers to know who is where and when. And I also wonder, as we move into this uncertain time, how we'll have to continue to be flexible at times. So I think it's yes, and I think it's probably, there may be times when students have to. I'll say with confidence, there will be times, as we're in this blended learning environment, where some students might have an exposure at home. So they're going to have to now Zoom, right? So our roomers might become Zoomers. And I also know that as a parent that at my son's school, their request, their letter said, if you choose to change your mind and you decide that you want to send your son at a later time, because my kid's going to be a Zoomer, there will be a process, right? But it doesn't mean that they can just show up the next day. There is going to be a process. I don't know if that process has been figured out yet. As a teacher, what I would be thinking to myself, though, is at any given moment, the roomers could become Zoomers. Do I have a plan for that? So am I auditing my class through the lens of the possibility of this kid being on Zoom? Do I have a plan for that? And Canvas helps with that, right?
Because I mean, yeah, and I've been using Nearpod, and I think it's gonna be the best for me to just stick with once the kids come back. But I was thinking more of the sitting chart ways, because if they have to be on a sitting chart and then we're gonna have a random student just come back, and like you said, like maybe that would have been a better question if we had a process of if the kids want to come back later on. And I mean, I think that if we have a process and we have a heads up where we have, okay, we have to rearrange our seating or whatever, that we know ahead of time, not just, oh, this kid just showed up today because they felt like coming back to school.
We can totally take that feedback back to the powers that be. Because classroom management is all about having a plan. And failure to plan is planning to fail. So I appreciate these thoughtful questions. Thank you all for being here. I noticed that some folks are hopping off, but we're gonna stick around as long as we need to. Edric, do you mind stopping the recording? We'll stop it. We'll stop the YouTube thing whenever.